It is believed that the greatest human losses on the planet were the two world wars of the last century. The First World War claimed more than 20 million lives, and the total losses in the Second World War are estimated at more than 50 million people. But there is another harvest that, according to various estimates, claimed up to 100 million human lives. The name of this harvest is the Spanish flu epidemic. It would be more accurate to call it the American flu, but we'll discuss that later. What do official sources say about this? Let's open Wikipedia. The Spanish flu is the common name for the flu pandemic that swept the world from 1918 to 1920. The disease was caused by the H1N1 serotype virus and affected about 30% of the Earth's population. It is believed that the hardships of wartime contributed to the development of the pandemic. Unsanitary conditions, poor nutrition, and overcrowding in military camps and refugee camps. Those who want to study the official version in more detail can look into this source, but we suggest taking a look at an alternative point of view, which you won't find on Wikipedia. Some doctors and politicians began to consider the man-made origins of the Spanish flu more than a century ago, when it was raging in Europe, America, and other parts of the world. But for an entire century, this version was, in modern terms, banned. Among the available sources about the man-made nature of the Spanish flu, it's worth first looking at the works of the American researcher Dr. Eleanor McBean. She was born in 1905 and died in 1989, so she was able to talk to many witnesses of the events related to the Spanish flu in the U.S. In a number of books, she harshly criticizes the healthcare and medical system that existed in the country at that time. She describes how allopathy replaced naturopathy in medicine, with natural remedies being replaced by synthetic drugs. The latter is based on drugs that do not exist in nature, on chemical and biotechnological substances that people invent and produce. The long-term effects of using such drugs are unknown, but they provide very high profits for their manufacturers. Thus, at the beginning of the 20th century, the monster of Big Pharma was conceived. The father of this monster can be considered billionaire John Rockefeller, and the mother is Frederick Gates, who organized a revolutionary reform of American healthcare and medical education, laying the foundation for the modern pharmaceutical industry, including the mass production of vaccine preparations. By the way, it is officially considered that there is no evidence that the now well-known Bill Gates is distantly related to Frederick Gates or is his descendant. However, the Gates clan, of which Frederick was a member, is very large and, among other things, was later connected by marriage to the Forbes clan. All of this is described in such books by Eleanor McBean as The Poisoned Needle, Suppressed Facts About Vaccinations. Vaccines, the greatest medical fraud in history. The History of Vaccination. Book 26. Hidden Dangers of the Polio Vaccine. Flu in 1918 and Today. The Return of Swine Flu. In all his works, McBean refers to the Spanish flu as a man-made epidemic, triggered by Frederick Gates and John Rockefeller, and more specifically by the vaccines produced by their companies. Thus, in the last of the mentioned books, which was published in 1977, the second chapter is called The Spanish Flu Epidemic Was Caused by Vaccinations. In this chapter, there is a subheading, I was a direct witness to the 1918 flu epidemic. In it, the author shares personal memories of the events of that time, which complement materials of a purely medical and scientific nature. Here is one of the vivid quotes from her works. 7 men dropped dead in the doctor's office after vaccination. Letters were sent to their families stating that they had been killed in action. There are also more recent sources. On the English-language website vaccine.org, Vaccine Impact, there is an article with the intriguing title, Did the Military Experimental Vaccine in 1918 Kill 50 to 100 Million People under the Guise of the Spanish Flu? The publication came out 3 years ago, and it was timed to coincide with the sad centennial anniversary of the start of the Spanish flu pandemic. The author of the article is Kevin Barry, president of the nonprofit organization First Freedoms, Inc., which fights against violations of the American Constitution and human rights abuses in the United States. Barry began his fight against vaccinations when one of his sons became disabled after such a procedure. Kevin Barry is a like-minded associate of the well-known human rights activist and anti-vaccination advocate Robert Kennedy Jr., the nephew of the American President John Kennedy, who was assassinated in 1963. In 2015, Kevin Barry published the book Vaccine Whistleblower: Exposing Fraud in CDC Autism Research. The foreword to the book was written by Robert Kennedy Jr. In the mentioned book, as well as in his speeches, Kevin Barry recalls the Spanish flu from 100 years ago as a crime more massive and terrifying than even the preparation and provocation of the two world wars. Here are his conclusions. 1. During World War I, more soldiers died from diseases than from bullets. The key words in the article are as follows. The 1918-1919 bacterial vaccine experiment may have killed 50 to 100 million people. 2. The Spanish flu was not a viral influenza. According to a 2008 study by the U.S. National Institutes of Health, the predominant killer in 1918-1919 was bacterial pneumonia. In the mentioned study, mortality from bacterial pneumonia during the 1918-1919 influenza pandemic, it is noted that bacterial pneumonia was found to be the cause of death in 93% of all autopsies from 1918-1919 of those who died with a diagnosis of Spanish flu. 3. The epidemic was misnamed. The disease's first cases appeared at U.S. military bases, not in Spain. The experiment with the bacterial vaccine was first conducted on soldiers at Fort Riley, Kansas. This is one of the military epicenters of the epidemic. The epidemic should be called the American flu. 4. The raw material for producing serums, antitoxins, and vaccines that were injected into the soldiers was horses. From the same barrel, they drew the raw material to prepare medicines against diphtheria, tetanus, and meningitis. 5. The production of serums and vaccines was carried out by the Institute for Medical Research, which was established in 1901 by billionaire John Rockefeller and was headed by Frederick Gates. 6. During World War I, the Rockefeller Institute also sent similar batches of serum against meningococcus, the bacterial form of meningitis used at Fort Riley, to England, France, Belgium, Italy, and other countries. 7. Vaccinated American soldiers became carriers of bacterial pneumonia in Europe and other countries where they were sent after the U.S. declared entry into the war in April 1917. After returning home, they spread bacterial pneumonia in their homeland. 8. The stockpiles of vaccines created by Rockefeller and Gates were large, so they were given not only to the military but also to the civilian population of the United States after the end of World War I was announced, with all the resulting consequences. There is another additional source on this same topic: the Spanish flu of 1918. Only those who were vaccinated died. This blog is no longer available. This is a copy of the article. The blocked website was run by a well-known public figure in the U.S., educator, and active advocate for the restoration of the U.S. Constitution, Dr. Sel Martingano, author of the widely discussed book in America, Declaration of Dependence. Visitors to the website were greeted by the following message from Sel Martingano. This blog is not against vaccines. I want to urge readers to carefully read the documentation, exercise due diligence, and not blindly accept everything we are told. You might be surprised or concerned to learn that the Spanish flu of 1918 had nothing to do with Spain, and perhaps wasn't even the flu at all. Well, hold on tight. You're in for a rough ride. The blog was interesting and useful because it contained links to many sources, including the works of the previously mentioned Eleanor McBean. But maybe all these alternative versions are just another fake? There's not a drop of truth in the books mentioned, and these researchers are just so-called crackpots. Write what you think about this, and see you in future episodes on Cremola.